Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Cinema A to B. Alec, today on the agenda, this is the Netflix exclusive title Hitman, starring Mr. Glen Powell. So yeah, directed by Richard Linklater.
Also written by him too.
Yeah. And we are, okay, so caveat, we've already discussed this, but at the top, we are going to go ahead and play spoiler on this particular movie. So spoiler warning, spoiler alert. This isn't going to be spoiler light. Yeah, this isn't going to be spoiler light. This is just, we've felt like this one's going to be a little bit more challenging to speak to if we don't spoil it. So, what are your thoughts, man?
I know this had a brief theater run. Didn't obviously see it in the theater. I don't even think it came to where I live. So I saw all the big kind of write up about it and Netflix really pushing it and was like, hey, let's try something new. Let's, I talked to you and was like, hey, let's try Netflix movie, see how it is. It's getting a lot of press. Glen Powell's the it guy right now. Let's see if he holds up. And overall, this movie is to me. I actually was like, it was a fun movie to begin with, like going along with it. Like I could kind of enjoy it. Like I knew it pretty early on. So like I hadn't really done too much of knowing what this movie was about. Just read kind of the synopsis on Netflix. And so I kind of went in with it thinking that it was going to be a different film than it was, than the kind of the rom-com-esque thing. I thought it was going to be a little bit darker. And while there is dark aspects to it, it is really not a dark comedy in any sense of the word.
No. It's
much more closer to your rom-com with a couple dark elements to it. And so I was disappointed. So I figured like ending, and again, this is where the spoilers come in, the character arc of Gary, I don't see. I don't understand. I don't connect the dots of how he got there. Like I understand like he's experiencing this kind of like, who am I, this person and all these different people, but at the core, he's still him, And so I didn't feel like it was earned. I didn't like the way it went. It was obviously, this is kind of based off of a real life guy who did this.
Loosely. He obviously,
apparently he did not kill a cop. So
no, there's no,
there's no evidence for that.
No. The guy had a long, illustrious career working with law enforcement doing this.
So outside of the ending, which I felt kind of ruined most of the movie, I didn't think the movie was amazing. I definitely walked away, was going kind of like I was talking about, like, this feels very mid, fine. And then when I got to the end, I was like, wow, not a bad taste in my mouth, but certainly felt they didn't stick the landing, and it kind of made me go, that wasn't that great of a film. So it really turned me in that last like 20 minutes of like, I'm done. This movie, don't care.
It's rated as 6.9 right now on IMDb, which I think is probably about a full point higher than it is any right to be. It's average to above average. I enjoyed myself watching it. I gave it its due. I watched it here at the house late
on the screen,
just me
downstairs
on the projector. Nice. I think Gwen actually might have gotten a kick out of this had I opted to watch it with her, just with the the kind of the romantic element. The performances are good. Glen Powell gets to kind of play in this space. I think as an actor, it's probably a pretty fun role to dive into. It's funny because I didn't. This Adria, I'm like, wait, she looks really familiar, but I can't recall seeing her in anything. And it's like, well, after I watch it, I look up the credits and I'm like, oh, okay, holy smoke, she's like Andor, like a major character in Andor. Mm-hmm. What? No wonder she looks so familiar. She was good. I just don't think the script is as good as it needs to be. From the outset, he's really, really good at pretending to be these hitmen. And I thought that was a missed opportunity. Like, that's not, there's script writing, there's screenwriting rules that exist for a reason. And like, there's the refusal of the call where the protagonist is presented with this choice to go on this adventure. And he or she typically initially will reject it and like, be like, oh no, I need to go, like Luke famously is like, no, I've got a farm with my uncle. I can't be going off on adventures with you, Obi-Wan. Gary never does that. He's just like, okay. And then he's really, really ridiculously good at the outset, which I understand that in real life that was true.
Mm-hmm.
Like people can be really good at things. It's not interesting in a movie. If your protagonist is really, really good at something, it's a missed opportunity. Like he should have been bad to average and it should have been a disaster, but they should have had no other option as a department but to rely on him. And then, because then you get some humor from that, right? If he's just terrible.
Yeah. And you can see his growth as he goes
and then you
on
can see
these-
it. Right. I thought that was a missed, like just bullet point, story point of how to make it more interesting. It's not really as funny as it needs to be. Like it could be a lot funnier than it is. It plays things pretty straight and like pretty buttoned up, in my opinion. There was room for situational comedy. It was interesting to watch him be in these, these circumstances. Like I was kind of smirking depending on like the stereotypical tropes that they kind of walked through with people that want to hire hitmen. And I did get a kick out of like him going through that kind of montage of, I hate to disappoint you, but like, this isn't a real thing.
Yeah.
Like hitmen don't really exist. Like this is a complete fabrication by Hollywood. It had its opportunities to like kind of expand and it never got there. And yeah, the ending was like, oh, okay.
So I could go back to kind of his first outing. I can totally understand if like they want to make his first outing where he's like flawless or amazing or something, and it's a fluke because he's just so nervous. But then they bring on the next one and then he fails, Right. Or so like he's flawless, except at the end he drops character or something happens, but they can see the potential, and so that's why the police department is trying to mold him into taking over this stuff. Like it doesn't have to be absolutely terrible, but just something where we can still kind of grow. I don't know. The acting was fine. There was nothing that was super out of place that I wasn't upset about. The dialogue was okay. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. Again, for me, it was the story beats that really just, like you said, this is trying to be a romantic comedy. It's not as funny as it needs to be. It's not really as romantic as it needs to be. If it was trying to be a dark comedy with some of the pieces in it, it never reached that point to getting that actual dark comedy. And so it just kind of misses on so many levels.
Yeah. And then like they don't give you the story beats to have them go from basically just having sex all the time. Mm-hmm. Like this, just like no strings attached. He shows up. And that scene, that montage went on for way too long. Like way too long. It was I was getting bored. Okay, well now she's dressed up like a, airline stewardess.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, don't get me wrong. She's wonderful to look at, but it's from the story beat standpoint. It was like, okay, I get it. They're involved in this hot and heavy relationship. That's like, but then they make the characters make this huge leap to where they actually like fall in love with each other, which doesn't ever really make any sense.
No.
Like, especially after he like reveals who he really is. She's so quick to like, she's mad for like a day and a half. And then she's like, oh, okay. It's like, what?
And he's so prepared to protect her, even though it could mean his job. And so much so that, again, can we not stop? He kills a cop. Doesn't matter that the guy may be a dirty cop or a bad cop, but he still kills a cop or just kills someone. Like he was this mild-mannered teacher who just happens to moonlight for the police department. And then he ends up killing someone and he's totally okay with it. Like, yeah, that's sociopathic level.
Yeah, it was. And they set it up though with that speech he's giving to his class where he's like, he has them in two groups. He's like, well, what did you guys decide? And they're like, well, we're not going to exercise the death penalty. We're going to convict him life without parole. And then the other group's like, Stone Age. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? You don't have a prison system. You don't have any courts. There's no way to adjudicate this. And they're like, well, we can't banish him. Like that's not going to work. So it's execution. So they tried to lean on that story point as like his justification for often the dirty cop.
Yeah.
And it just felt
weak.
I don't know. I thought in that moment, I was watching Very Bad Things.
Yes.
with Jon Favreau, like with, and I was like, and I hate that movie, by the way, like it's full disclosure. It's terrible.
It's terrible.
But that's kind of what I had echoes of. And I was like, oh, so they're just going to be this murderous, like they're just going to justify being this murderous couple together. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what it was. So.
And it's a big jump because, again, he goes into this being so comfortable putting away people who are thinking about killing their spouses or killing someone else to completely forgiving.
Hers is funnier because she's like, well, but you told me he was going to kill me.
Yeah.
And so hers made way more sense. Like her situation made way more sense, but it still wasn't really. He's like, well, she's like, oh, I think he was like passed out or sleeping or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like what? Like,
yeah, it's an absurdist tale.
Yeah, it is. And just interesting.
I just don't know if this was the best execution for the source material for the real guy. I feel like it almost does a disservice to the real Gary and the guys that the people that he helped put away. Maybe it just wasn't really interesting enough and they just had to kind of use it. We're just gonna make this a, quasi comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
this is not a terrible movie, but
it's not. But it's definitely mid. It's very, very in the center, like you said, average to maybe above average in some regards. I mean, it's shot well, lit well. Like it's totally seamless. I'm not thinking about the sets or the lighting or the edit.
Yeah, and
it just kind of happens, which is
and
nice.
They shot this in New Orleans, right? Yep.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, because it was supposed to be Texas, but the Texas didn't have great film credits or tax breaks, and so they decided to shoot in Louisiana, which has a lot better. So
yeah, it was either probably that or Georgia. Yeah.
I have to say, we have talked about neither of us are really hating on narrations or thinking that a movie with a narrator is a bad movie, much like one of our mutual friends who thinks that it's just lazy. But I will say there are parts where I like the narration, but when it opens up with, yeah, that's me, I'm just kind of like, that's just terrible. Yeah.
It was heavy-handed. Yeah.
And it did a lot of that where it talked at me a little too much or just felt.
It's pretty spoon-fed.
Like it was lazy. Like we didn't actually know how to get this across. And
so do you remember me referencing that article? I forget which episode we did. I don't care. But I referenced that article where when they pitch these things, they basically, the executives want to know whether or not you've got story elements embedded in to deal with somebody watching on a phone while they watch your Netflix movie.
Yeah.
That's what this feels like.
Yeah. 100%.
That's what the voiceover at the beginning totally feels like that. Like, okay, I'm on my phone. I'm not watching the screen, but my ears are still working. So I'm just going to listen to Glen Powell spoon feed me the beginning, like the setup for this movie. That's what this feels like. So they may have been strong armed into that. Like that might not have been a creative decision at all. Just like, oh, well, Netflix is fronting the cash. We want to get it greenlit. We're going to fall on the sword and let them. It's disgusting, by the way.
Yeah,
if that's,
it is.
I mean, whether or not this is really why that exists, I don't know, but it felt like that. It felt like,
well, because it was such a small, again, not 100%, but I'm pretty sure it was a short or small theater run. I don't remember, again, if it came to, any of the theaters I was going to at the time, but
I don't remember.
I know Laura and I watched this and she kind of felt the same way. She was just like, okay. And kind of looked at me. She's like, you're going to be talking about this movie on the podcast?
Yeah.
And it was like, again, I was like, this is, need to talk about it. It's a big push by Netflix. They're a player now. Hey, let's try something new.
Well, and we're not, like, full disclosure, we're not getting compensated by Netflix to talk about this steaming pile. No, it's not a steaming pile. I kind of jest. I didn't regret watching it. I didn't feel like it was like a total waste of my time. I was fairly entertained. My other gripe, I don't know. Glen Powell's kind of just on the fringe for me in appearance of being able to pull off playing like initial geeky Gary and then going like he's like borderline, like,
yeah, he doesn't really play the geeky too well.
Not that well, but he plays it better than like Brad Pitt would have, right? Like Brad Pitt doesn't take roles like that where they make him look, I mean, as weird as he's ever looked was probably like 12 Monkeys and he was just, insane.
Well, there's that joke in like Burn After Reading where they actually had to like get suits that were like 2 sizes too big because they were buying cheap suits for Brad Pitt, and even the bad suits, like really terrible quality suits, looked good in them. And so
Glen Powell's like kind of on the fringe of like, really, can he really pull that off? But he does okay with it. The problem is he's in like too good a shape to play. Like everything else is fine. The hairdo is really good. The glasses, he's got the like heavy 5 o'clock shadow, the clothing, but he's too fit.
Yeah. Like
he's just too fit. Like, and Powell's not going to put on weight for this role, like, and then like shed it to play. Like that's not going to make sense. But yeah, I'm like, that guy's way too good a shape to be Gary. Like he's carrying too much muscle on him. That's the problem. Like it's one thing for Gary to be skinny, which I don't think the real guy was anyway. I think he was pretty average, but
to be fit,
but to be kind of, to be
cut.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. It works later when he's pretending to be all these hitmen. It's like, then it works, but it's like, I don't have a whole lot of things to praise with this.
But again, he's kind of in the cusp of where he's on that line right now of he's kind of the it guy, and can he turn that into something more than what it currently is? Though he said he doesn't want to do a franchise film at all. Like he's not interested in Marvel or being in Star Wars, any of those things. So I think trying to go the way of, I don't know. I'm trying to.
Says the guy that was in a Top Gun sequel.
Yeah.
And is probably going to do another Top Gun sequel.
Yeah. Hey man, okay. Top Gun Rooster is going to, you called it, man. Top Gun Rooster. It's happening.
I mean, it's probably not going to be called Rooster, but it is happening. And I can't believe it's happening.
But so
I like Powell. I like watching him. It was fun to see him operate within the different, characters that he was playing, just because nobody's really seen him do it. Right. He's always just, he was relegated to being the jerk off kind of in Maverick, which he did beautifully.
Yeah. I mean, then he did that movie with the guy. Oh my goodness. It was called Devotion. It was the guy who's supposed to be the big bad. I didn't either. Pilot.
It's like Korean War movie.
Yeah. But he was Jonathan Majors. That's right.
Okay.
The guy who used to be in the MCU and then got convicted and kicked out.
And I know he did the romantic comedy with Sydney Sweeney.
Anyone But You.
Yeah. I haven't watched that. I haven't watched that yet, but yeah. I mean, and then I'm looking forward to him in Twisters. I think he was a good casting decision to play that.
I think he's a great casting
based on everything I've seen with the trailer. Yeah.
He could do that kind of cocky Maverick style, kind of like look, I could see kind of similar like Bill Pullman or even like Mel Gibson early years and like Lethal Weapon. He kind of pulls that.
I tell you who he feels like the most to me is Matthew McConaughey.
Ooh.
When I watch him and like the roles he's taking and the trajectory he's kind of following right now, it feels a lot like early McConaughey.
Okay, I could see that.
He's going to be afforded some opportunities that McConaughey wasn't early in his career. This one being, case in point, something he like co-wrote with Linklater and helped probably producer credit on it as well. A lot of those other guys that are 10 to 20 years older than him weren't in a position to do that kind of stuff. Yeah, he was a producer. So
I was with Linklater. I was expecting a little bit more from this movie than what I got. I mean, this is he did Boyhood. He did A Scanner Darkly. Heck, I mean, he did School of Rock as well. So, which is still kind of that fun, not cheesy movie, but that interesting entertainment comedy that is, I believe, for me, fantastic. I really love that movie.
Yeah, but he's kind of he's a fairly offbeat director, so it's not like they definitely
Dazed and Confused. So
yeah, they definitely like pick somebody that kind of typically has their own signature that they put on stuff. But this, I'll be honest, this one didn't really feel that way. Like it felt pretty sterile, like just stylistically. I didn't really like, I didn't notice that it was Linklater until I looked later. So.
Oh, you almost snuck that by me, buddy.
Almost got it.
Almost got it.
Almost got it, buddy.
Almost got it. So for some reason, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen this and we've spoiled it all, it's still a fun little watch. We were both entertained. There's not much else I can really say about it.
The problem is your better half does have a really good point of like, you guys are going to do this because of all of these great films that we've never bothered to discuss yet.
We're doing this one.
But darn it, we got Hitman in off Netflix
under the
from
wire.
last year. There we go. Yeah.
I think it was, we try to do, for the listeners out there, we try to do some new stuff as well as old stuff. So we're not just going back into the catalog.
Absolutely. And this follows, there's an organic nature to like the stuff we pick. So, and this falls right in line with it. It's like you had watched it. You're like, hey, you want to do that? Sure. Yeah. It's out. It's current, semi-current. Yeah. Let's give it a watch.
It's number 1 on Netflix right at the moment.
Is it really?
It was. I don't know if it's still right there.
Yeah.
I know at one point it was the most watched on Netflix. So it was definitely big.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm excited to see where
Glen Powell goes.
Where Glen and Adria.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see Adria maybe in Andor season 2. Because but you got to wonder what her demise looks like. I don't know, but
they don't have to kill her off just because she doesn't show up in Rogue One doesn't mean no.
There's a lot of people that show up in Andor that don't show up in Rogue One, then I'm sure.
And see, mainly Alec, Alec picked this movie so that we could just wrap the conversation back into Andor. That's all it was. Always. It was like, oh, she's in Andor season 1. If we don't really like the movie, then we could just talk about Andor some more. Mission accomplished.
I would say that you're wrong, but maybe
and she's
not.
good. I really like. Yeah. She's a very natural actress. Like she's not. She doesn't overdo it for the camera. I will give kudos. I did really like the scene where he comes barging in the house and they act out the whole thing because he's got the wire and he's meanwhile throwing messages up on his phone. That was fun.
Yeah.
That was fun.
She handled it really well too. So I'm going to go back, just fun story because it got brought up and we'll never do this movie. So this is the only time I probably will thinking I'll do it. But so you hate Very Bad Things. I hate it too. So much so that I had gotten the DVD without seeing it. It was like the $5 or $1 bin at Walmart at the time and like buy 10 movies for $10 or something like that. I'd gotten it because I was like, Jon Favreau, fantastic. Let's do it. Watched it. No joke. I never throw movies away. I threw it away. Didn't donate it. Nothing. Just threw this DVD away. It was like, nope, do not want this in my collection. I mean, like I have so much crap in my DVD collection that I just keep. This one I was like, absolutely not. Just gone.
Yeah. But completely support the decision.
I hate that movie so much.
Yeah, it's rough. It's just rough.
I mean, I hate that movie, but I don't hate this movie. Like I did Very Bad Things.
No, but this will be forgotten. This will.
We won't be talking about this in a couple years.
No,
outside of if and when Glen Powell blows up, it'll be referenced when we talk about the better movies that he's in. Of how far he's come from Hitman.
Yeah. You got anything else to add?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
All right.
So,
well, everybody,
they're not all winners.
No, they're not. They're not. And like, they shouldn't be. Making a great movie is really hard. Well, yeah, this has got some stuff going for it. And it'll have, I know he's slowly building a fan base. Powell is. If they don't overdo it with his releases being, in such a close proximity to one another, I get worried about that stuff, but really actors and actresses don't have a whole lot of control over that. So it's up to the studios when they want to release. So yeah, they're going to ride that wave and hopefully he's around. I hope he's not like a, flash in the pan, but we'll see.
We will see.
Well, we appreciate everybody tuning into this, very average episode of Cinema A to B for a very average movie, Hitman on Netflix. We appreciate you tuning in or watching us converse on this piece of, man, I don't even want to call it cinema, but I guess it is.
Still art, buddy. It's still art.
Yeah, that's a reach. That's a reach. All right, everybody. If you got any requests, send them in, send them at a2b@gmail.com or hop on over to our YouTube channel and drop us a line. And we appreciate you.
Thanks, everybody.